They said she'd crack under pressure, that she didn't belong in a cockpit, let alone in the beast known as the A-10 Warthog. But Sarah Kane didn't join the Air Force to prove people wrong. She joined to fly. It was 0545 hours when she stepped onto the tarmac, the morning sky still dark. Her boots echoed against the concrete, slow and steady, as if the entire airfield was holding its breath. Most of the squadron was already gathered, watching. Some curious, some skeptical, a few openly dismissive. Solo landing, huh? One of the older pilots muttered, not even bothering to hide the smirk. Hope the runway's ready for a crash. Sarah heard it. She heard all of it. But her eyes stayed forward. No snappy comebacks. No need to prove anything. Not yet. Inside the hangar, the Warthog sat like a sleeping dragon. Heavy, rugged, and intimidating even to seasoned pilots. Nicknamed the Tank Killer. It wasn't built for showboating. It was built for war. Sarah climbed the ladder in silence, helmet in hand. As she strapped in, the world outside the canopy faded. It was just her now. Her, the aircraft, and the sky. The ground crew gave a thumbs up. She returned it with a nod. Her fingers danced across the controls like she'd done it 100 times before. But today was different. Today, no one was sitting beside her. She radioed the tower. Warthog 1, ready for solo flight. Copy that, Warthog 1. The tower responded, neutral but tight. Proceed when ready. The engines roared to life, vibrating through the cockpit like a living thing. As she taxied toward the runway, her eyes scanned every gauge, every switch. Her mind was calm, focused. But beneath that calm was a storm, because Sarah knew what they were all thinking. She'd heard the whispers in the mess hall. The doubts passed around like coffee. Too young, too inexperienced, too female. They didn't say it out loud. Not anymore. But silence had a sound, and Sarah had learned to hear it clearly. She lined up on the runway. The tower gave the all-clear. And then, throttle forward. The Warthog surged ahead like it had been waiting for her command all its life. The G-force pressed her into the seat, but she held firm, eyes locked on the horizon. Airborne in seconds. The ground fell away, replaced by clouds and endless sky. Her heartbeat slowed as altitude climbed. Every maneuver tight, controlled, perfect. She practiced this for months. Simulators, night drills, emergency scenarios, but nothing compared to the real thing. The radio stayed mostly quiet, except for occasional updates. She flew beyond the airfield, through designated airspace, before beginning her return loop. That's when the crosswind started. 30 knots and climbing. She tightened her grip, adjusted flaps. Read the turbulence like lines in a book. But it wasn't just wind she was fighting, it was doubt. She glanced at the base. The runway stretched out like a tightrope. No room for error. Back in the tower, the squadron leaned in. No more jokes. No more whispers. Sarah brought the Warthog around, lining up the final approach. Her voice crackled through the radio. Coming in, final descent. No hesitation. No panic. Just skill. She lowered the landing gear, countered the crosswind with subtle precision. The runway raced up to meet her. Wheels down. Gentle bounce. Then solid contact. A perfect landing. Solo. For a moment, no one said a word. Not in the tower. Not on the ground. The only sound was the engine winding down and the soft click of her helmet release. Sarah didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just climbed out of the cockpit like it was any other flight. But inside she knew this wasn't just a landing. It was the beginning. The silence after her landing didn't last long. By the time Sarah reached the tarmac, the whispers had already started again. But this time, they sounded different. Not mocking. Not dismissive. Confused. Curious. She walked past the group without a word. No nod. No smile. Just that same steady gaze. The kind that didn't ask for permission. But not everyone was silent. Luck, someone said under his breath, just loud enough for a few to hear. She got lucky. Sarah heard that too. Inside the debriefing room, the air was thick with tension. The commanding officer, Colonel Wright, stood at the front. He looked at her, eyes unreadable. Then, without ceremony, he clicked a remote, bringing up flight data on the screen. All systems performed within parameters, he said. Landing was smooth. Wind conditions were above recommended for a solo. Still, she brought it home. A few glances were exchanged. Some impressed, some skeptical, but no one argued. Sarah didn't stay long after the briefing. She signed her paperwork, logged her flight time, and headed back to the hangar. She needed space. Noise was one thing. Doubt was another. The next morning came fast. Another drill. Another rotation. But something was different. When Sarah checked the flight assignments, her name was alone. Again. No co-pilot. No training officer. Just her and the Warthog. Another solo flight. And this time, it wasn't for practice. The skies that morning were calm. Blue. Deceptively peaceful. But Sarah knew better. She knew that the quiet before a storm was the most dangerous. As she strapped into the cockpit, she noticed something strange. A faint ping on the radar. Far off. Barely noticeable. But there. She ran a systems check. Everything clean. Radioed the tower. Warthog 1, ready for takeoff. Cleared for departure, came the reply. Once airborne, she followed her assigned patrol route. Standard sweep. Low risk. Nothing unusual. But that blip on her radar? It hadn't disappeared. In fact, it was getting closer. She narrowed her eyes, adjusting the zoom on her HUD. It wasn't a flock of birds. Not a civilian plane. It was too fast. Too direct. She keyed her mic control. I've got an unknown approaching. Confirm ID. A long pause. Then static. No answer. She checked her instruments again. All normal. But the signal was still there. Moving faster. Heading straight for her. Then her comms came alive. Warthog 1, we're picking up the same contact. It's not friendly. That was all she needed to hear. She turned sharply, locking onto the radar target. A small dot, fast and erratic. Not flying a commercial pattern. Not part of any exercise. And then she saw it. A fighter jet. Sleek. Black. Markings unfamiliar. It had no call sign. No IFF. Just speed and intent. They called it the Kraken. She'd heard of it before. Enemy jet. Advanced. Rare. Piloted by elite operatives. Few had ever engaged it. Fewer had lived to tell the story. But now it was behind her. Her breath slowed. Her training kicked in. She knew the Warthog wasn't built for speed, but it was built for resilience. Still, this was no simulation. No exercise. This was real. And she was alone. She leveled out. Kept altitude. Let the enemy make the first move. And it did. The Kraken closed in with impossible speed. No warnings. No signals. Just cold, silent pursuit. Sarah kept her eyes on the horizon, hands tight on the stick. She didn't panic. She didn't flinch. But she knew. This was no longer a routine patrol. This was a fight. And it had only just begun. The radar kept blinking. The signal was locked on her, steady and aggressive. It wasn't following protocol. It wasn't backing off. Whoever was flying the Kraken wasn't here to scare her. They were here to bring her down. Sarah leveled the Warthog and pulled into a tight turn. She needed to buy time. Gain distance. Think. The Warthog was tough but slower than most fighters. It could take punishment, yes, but it wasn't designed to run. Still, Sarah wasn't planning to run. She opened comms again. Control, this is Warthog 1. I'm being tailed by hostile aircraft. Requesting confirmation on engagement protocol. Silence. Then static. Then nothing. Comms were jammed. Her heart skipped, but her hands didn't shake. She trained for blackout scenarios. Not often. Not like this. But she remembered the drills. No backup. No radio. Just you in the sky. She dropped altitude. Fast. The Warthog responded with a low growl as she dove through the cloud layer. Wind hammered the fuselage. Her HUD flickered, still tracking the enemy. The Kraken followed. Effortless. Precise. Sarah could feel it. The way it stayed just out of missile range. Close enough to threaten. Far enough to control the game. Whoever was flying it was experienced. Calculated. They were testing her. She pulled a sharp bank left, skimming the edge of a rocky ridge. The Warthog vibrated under the strain, but held. Dust rose from the mountainside. Her eyes scanned the terrain for anything she could use. Cover, canyons, dead zones. Nothing. Open sky. She climbed again, trading altitude for time. The Kraken stayed close. Watching. Waiting. Sarah knew what they were doing. They wanted her to panic. They wanted her to burn fuel, make a mistake, expose a weakness. But she wasn't giving them that. Her jaw clenched. She locked eyes on the forward display. Her mind began to work in overdrive. What would they expect her to do next? Try to flee? Go defensive? She had one weapon they hadn't calculated: unpredictability. She eased off the throttle. Just a little. Enough to let the Kraken get closer. Tempt them. The dot on her radar moved in. Hooked like a shark to blood. Closer. Closer. Sarah armed her countermeasures. Waited. Her thumb hovered over the release. One flare too early, and the game was over. 1 second too late, and she was dust. She breathed once. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Then flash. The Kraken fired. Missile lock. She punched the flare and rolled hard right. The cockpit shook violently. The flare ignited like a second sun behind her. The missile streaked past, blinded by the heat. Her HUD screamed at her. Low altitude. System strained. But she was alive. And now it was her turn. She pulled a loop, using gravity to swing her back around. Her nose came up under the Kraken. The enemy fighter overshot, just slightly. But enough. Sarah squeezed the trigger. Cannons roared. Not a direct hit, but enough to spook. The Kraken banked away. Fast. It didn't flee. But it backed off. She leveled again, breathing hard, eyes still locked forward. The radar was clear for now. She didn't know how long it would last. She didn't know if it was over. But one thing was certain. The pilot of the Kraken wasn't expecting her. And whatever game they thought they were playing, Sarah had just changed the rules. The sky had never felt so quiet. Sarah scanned every corner of her HUD, her breathing shallow, ears tuned to every tick of the engine. The Kraken had pulled away, but she knew better than to believe it was gone. Fighters like that didn't vanish. They circled. They waited. She tapped the console, checking fuel. Lower than she'd like. The Warthog had power, but not endless range. Every move from here on had to count. No radio. No backup. Just her. Somewhere in that vast blue silence, a predator was still hunting. Sarah began climbing, gaining altitude while staying close to the canyon ridges below. If the Kraken returned, she needed options, ways to dodge, places to disappear. But in this open sky, there were few places to hide. Then she saw it. A flicker on the radar. Barely a blip. But it wasn't the Kraken. It was a drone. High-altitude surveillance. Silent. Fast. And not supposed to be in this zone. It moved like a scout, sent ahead to track, to feed coordinates back to the hunter. Sarah knew what that meant. This wasn't a random encounter. This was coordinated. She was being baited. She banked right, hard, keeping the drone in her peripheral view. The Warthog could take it out easily. But she didn't fire. Not yet. Not until she knew who else was watching. Then her HUD flashed again. Missile warning. From above. The Kraken was back. It had waited for her to focus on the drone. A trap inside a trap. She pulled hard into a dive. Flare deployed. The missile skimming past her left wing. Close. Too close. Her teeth clenched as she leveled out inches above the canyon floor. No time to breathe. The Kraken came screaming after her, faster than anything she'd faced. She ducked into a narrow ravine, the rocks slicing past like blades. The Warthog roared, the engines near redline. But she held steady. The canyon walls were tight. One wrong move, and she'd become nothing more than twisted metal and headlines. But Sarah trusted her instincts, trusted her training. The Kraken followed, but slower now, hesitating. It wasn't made for this kind of flying. This was her chance. She banked into a sharp left turn, hugging the wall so close that the right wing nearly scraped stone. The Kraken tried to follow, but it drifted too wide. She popped up, over the ridge, and caught a glimpse, just for a second. The enemy pilot, helmeted, calm, focused, not surprised. This wasn't just a fight. This was a test. Sarah pulled up and rolled. Her fingers danced across the controls as the Warthog climbed high above the valley. The sky opened around her, endless and blinding. The radar blinked again. Another lock. Another missile. She twisted mid-air, diving backward into the clouds, releasing flares, jamming signals. Her body slammed against the seat from the G-force, vision narrowing. The missile missed. Barely. But this time, she didn't recover into a glide. She went on the offensive. She rolled into the sun, using glare to mask her position. The Kraken hesitated. That was all she needed. She looped behind it, closing in. Her cannon primed. One shot. Two. The round zipped past the tail of the Kraken, forcing it to break formation. A hit. Unclear. But it was falling back. Not fleeing. Not defeated. But rethinking everything. And in that moment, Sarah realized something. She wasn't being hunted anymore. She was being watched. Measured. Whoever they were, they wanted to see what she'd do next. Sarah steadied her breathing, eyes locked on the shrinking silhouette of the Kraken. It was pulling back, deliberate, methodical. Not retreating. Not beaten. Just observing. Calculating. The kind of move that didn't come from arrogance, but confidence. The kind of confidence that only came from experience. She wasn't dealing with just any pilot. Whoever was in that cockpit knew exactly what they were doing. She climbed again, keeping the sun behind her. Her fingers gripped the throttle tighter. Her training told her to disengage, to return to base, conserve fuel, report the contact. But her gut said otherwise. Something about this was wrong. This wasn't an enemy patrol. It wasn't a border violation. It was personal. She pulled into a wide arc, circling above the last known location of the Kraken. The sky was quiet again, but it didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a stage, like she was being drawn into something bigger than just a dogfight. Suddenly, her HUD blinked. A second contact. Smaller. Fast. Coming in from the west. Another drone? No. Too fast. Too low. Another aircraft. She turned toward it, boosting speed. She needed answers. But before she could get close, the contact vanished. Gone. Just like that. No signal. No radar. No trace. Sarah's eyes narrowed. She wasn't alone out here, and she wasn't supposed to know that. She opened her comms again, trying an alternate channel. Warthog 1 requesting emergency uplink. Multiple unidentifieds in restricted airspace. Comms are compromised. Please advise. Still nothing. Not even static. They'd killed her signal entirely. She was completely cut off. The realization hit her harder than any missile. Whoever was behind this didn't just want to scare her. They wanted her isolated. Cornered. No command. No help. No witnesses. Her mind raced through possibilities. This wasn't a drill. Not a test. She knew classified operations existed. Black flights, unsanctioned missions, rogue actors testing U.S. defenses. But this was too precise. Too surgical. And she was in the middle of it. She adjusted altitude again, heading toward a nearby ridge where she could level out and regroup. But before she reached it, the Kraken reappeared. It didn't come fast this time. It drifted into view, almost casual. Like it knew she'd be here. Like it had planned every second of this flight. Sarah locked her weapon system again, tracking. Her heartbeat was steady, but her thoughts were sharp. It wasn't here to finish her. Not yet. It was waiting for her to make a mistake. She kept her sights fixed, finger near the trigger. But she didn't fire. And neither did the Kraken. The two aircraft circled in silence, two predators, sharing the same sky. Then slowly, the Kraken dipped a wing. A signal. Not military. Not procedural. A challenge. Sarah knew that move. Fighter pilots did it during showdowns. A way of saying, let's see what you've got. It wasn't just watching her anymore. It was inviting her. Her training told her to break off, return to base, follow the rules. But rules didn't apply anymore. Not out here. Not now. She dipped her wing in return. Just slightly. Not a signal of submission, one of readiness. The message was clear. She wasn't backing down. The Kraken's engines flared, and it shot forward, vanishing into the clouds. Sarah throttled up and followed. She didn't know where it was leading her. But one thing was certain. If they wanted to test her, they were about to find out exactly who she was. The clouds swallowed her whole. Visibility dropped to nearly nothing. Just gray, thick and cold, with only her instruments to guide her. The Kraken had disappeared into the mist like a ghost, fast and deliberate. Sarah kept her grip steady, her breathing even. Every nerve in her body was awake, every instinct screaming that this was the moment that would define everything. She throttled forward, chasing the unknown. Then, out of nowhere, a flash. The Kraken dropped back and behind her, emerging from the fog, like a blade through smoke. It had looped behind while she charged in blind. Sarah cursed under her breath. The maneuver was perfect. Too perfect. This pilot wasn't just skilled. They were trained in deception, in psychological warfare. Her threat radar lit up. Missile lock. But no launch. They were toying with her. She dove into a spiral, breaking away, rolling hard to shake the lock. The Warthog groaned under the pressure, but held. Her body was being pushed to the edge, G-forces slamming her chest, vision narrowing. But she didn't back off. She cut low through a break in the clouds and saw terrain again. Rolling hills, a stretch of desert, rocks and ridges like open scars on the earth. The perfect place for a fight. The Kraken dropped behind her again, keeping distance. Still not firing. Still observing. Then her radar pinged twice. Two more aircraft. Small. Fast. Approaching from opposite sides. Whoever was running this operation wasn't testing her anymore. They were surrounding her. But why? Why not shoot her down? Why keep circling her like wolves with no bite? Unless this wasn't about destroying her. It was about drawing her in. Sarah yanked the controls and climbed, hard and fast. She blew past one of the flanking aircraft, definitely drones. No pilots. Automated, fast and maneuverable. But drones didn't fly like this without a handler. Someone somewhere was watching all of this play out in real time, testing her limits. She looped over, targeting the drone, and fired. One clean burst. A direct hit. The explosion lit the sky in a flash of orange and black. The other drone peeled off. The Kraken stayed. Still no fire. Still just following. Sarah's mind shifted. What if this wasn't about her skills as a pilot? What if they were watching to see something else? Her reactions. Her strategy. Her decision-making under pressure. What if they already knew she could fly? And now they wanted to know what she would do when outnumbered, outgunned, and completely alone. But Sarah had one advantage they didn't count on. She wasn't flying to survive. She was flying to win. She cut power for a moment and let the Warthog drop. A dangerous move. A gamble. The sudden loss of altitude forced the Kraken to adjust. For one split second, they were both exposed. She hit the afterburner. Straight up, nose to the sky. Then rolled. Hard left. Flipping the Warthog completely over. The Kraken lost visual. That was her chance. She came around behind it. For the first time since the engagement began, she had the upper hand. She locked on. Missile armed. The Kraken swerved. Fast. Evasive. But not perfect. She fired. Directed to the tail. It didn't explode. It didn't fall. but it veered, hard and uncontrolled. Smoke poured from its engines as it disappeared into the horizon. Was it down? Crashing? Retreating? She couldn't tell. But for the first time, the sky was hers again. Her breathing slowed. Her hand shook just slightly. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. Because she knew this wasn't over. Whoever had sent that jet had more than technology. They had a plan. And now, they knew exactly who she was. The desert stretched beneath her like a battlefield gone quiet. Smoke from the Kraken's damaged engines still lingered on the horizon, a fading reminder of the fight. Sarah stayed at altitude, circling the airspace cautiously, scanning every readout, every blip. But there was nothing. The skies had gone dead silent again. Her comms crackled to life barely. Just a flicker of sound. Warthog 1. Respond, do you copy? Finally, a voice. She keyed the mic. Warthog 1. Contact made with hostile aircraft. One drone down. One unknown fighter possibly damaged. Returning to base. The line went dead again. She glanced at her fuel. Dangerously low. The entire engagement had burned through more reserves than planned. She didn't have time to circle again. She turned toward home. As the base came into view over the horizon, a strange quiet settled over her. Not relief. Not victory. Something colder. She touched down smooth, wheels kissing the runway like a whisper. Her hands moved automatically, powering down the systems, flipping switches, releasing the canopy. But even as her boots hit the tarmac, she felt the difference. The airfield was too quiet. No one came rushing out. No crew. No ground team. Only two figures stood by the hangar. One in uniform. One in a suit. Colonel Wright and someone she didn't recognize. She walked toward them slowly, helmet under her arm. Every step felt heavier. Wright met her with a nod. Welcome back, Lieutenant. The man in the suit didn't nod. He studied her like data on a screen. You engaged in unauthorized aircraft, the man said. No introduction. No rank. Tell us everything. Sarah gave a quick, clear debrief. Facts only. No assumptions. No guesses. Just the maneuvers, the lock-ons, the strike. When she finished, the man didn't blink. That jet, he said, was not on any known radar network. No transponder. No heat signature until you fired. We've reviewed the satellite feed. What you saw doesn't officially exist. Sarah narrowed her eyes. Then who was flying it? That's what we intend to find out, the man replied. And that's why you won't speak of this mission again. Wright gave her a look. Not warning. Not threat. Something closer to regret. Sarah took a breath. Was this a test? The man paused. You weren't supposed to engage. But you did. And you won. That changes things. She stared at him. Changes what? He stepped closer. How high you go next? Before she could answer, he handed her a sealed envelope. Thick. Unmarked. Orders, he said. Follow them exactly. Then he turned and walked away. Wright stood silently beside her for a moment, then spoke. You did more than land a Warthog alone, Lieutenant. You walked straight into something none of us were briefed on. Sarah opened the envelope. Inside, coordinates. A time. A call sign she didn't recognize. No explanation. No mission title. Just a location. She looked up at the colonel. Is this real? He nodded once. It's real. And whatever it is, they want you in it. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She sat in the darkness of her quarters, the envelope open on her desk. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the Kraken again. Not the jet. The pilot. That steady control. That silence. That unspoken message. This wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. And whoever was watching her up there wasn't finished yet. The next morning came with no sunrise. Thick clouds blanketed the sky, painting the base in steel-gray shadows. Sarah stood alone at the edge of the tarmac, flight suit zipped, helmet in hand, eyes on the hangar where a different kind of aircraft waited. One she'd never flown, never even seen in active rotation. Sleek, angular, black as night. It wasn't marked. No insignia. No tail number. Just a call sign stenciled on the side in dull red. Ghost 6. The man in the suit arrived without a word. He handed her a tablet. One briefing. One objective. No destination listed, just encrypted coordinates and a single phrase. Observe, do not engage. Sarah stepped toward the aircraft, her boots echoing in the silence. Every eye on the base was either turned away or pretending not to look. They knew. Something about this wasn't standard. This wasn't command. This was something beyond it. As the canopy closed over her, the cockpit lit up. Holographic systems, silent diagnostics, voice recognition. No radio chatter. No ground control. The engines whispered to life. She lifted off vertically, the jet hovering like it defied gravity itself. No runway. No clearance. Just departure. Minutes passed. Then hours. She followed the path on her HUD as it shifted mid-air twice. Whoever was directing her didn't want a straight trail. They were hiding the destination, even from her. Finally, the clouds broke. Below her, a massive installation carved into a cliffside, surrounded by desert and canyons. No air traffic. No roads. No signs of life. Except for one. On the far side of the landing platform stood another jet. Sleek. Dark. Familiar. The Kraken. Intact. Waiting. Sarah touched down slowly. The platform responded to her arrival with silent precision, lowering her aircraft into the hangar below. As the canopy opened, she stepped out and saw them. A small group. For people in suits. One in uniform. And one pilot. Helmet under arm. Calm eyes. It was her. The Kraken's pilot. Female. Mid-30s. Expression unreadable. She stepped forward and extended her hand. Call sign Viper, she said. Welcome to Tier 9. Sarah didn't shake the hand. She looked past her to the group. What is this? One of the suited figures spoke. The part of the world you're not supposed to know exists. Until you pass the test. Sarah's voice didn't waver. That wasn't a test. That was a trap. Viper smiled. That was both. The uniformed officer stepped forward. You didn't break formation. You didn't panic. You showed restraint, control, and lethal accuracy when it counted. That's what we needed to see. Sarah folded her arms. You risked lives to see something? The woman called Viper shook her head. We don't test everyone like that. Just the ones who show potential no one else sees. Sarah was quiet, watching, calculating. The officer continued. There's a war coming. Not one you'll see on the news. Not one you can fight with a squadron. It'll be fought in shadows. In skies where rules don't exist. We need pilots who can fly without them. Viper leaned in. The Kraken wasn't meant to kill you. It was meant to wake you up. Sarah looked at her. And if I had failed? Viper answered coldly. You wouldn't be standing here. Silence fell. The kind of silence that demanded a decision. Sarah looked around the hangar. The jets. The people. The secrecy. Then back to Viper. I didn't come here to play spy games, she said. You didn't, Viper replied. You came here because you're not done yet. Sarah didn't smile. But she didn't walk away either. Because deep down she knew. She was exactly where she was meant to be.